Okay, hello everybody. Today we will be doing a tier list of the various endings in the game Fatum Betula. For the uninitiated, Fatum Betula is a atmospheric, a little bit spooky exploration game in which your primary goal is to obtain. The primary goal is to do whatever you want, but really, what I think most players end up wanting to go for is obtaining all the endings and there's going to be a ranking of those endings. There's endings 0 through 9, so that's 10 endings right there, and then there's an additional secret ending, so that's like 11 in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, okay. So 11 endings in total. We're just going to be going through them. Um, the list is going to be based on, one, the ending itself and the content it holds, like how much I like it, how interesting I think it is, and it's also going to be based on B, how much I enjoy the actual process of getting to that ending. So, jumping through the hoops in order to obtain what you need to get that ending. Quick explanation of the tiers. S is just cream of the crop, the best of the best, unbeatable. A is basically the same thing, except there's something holding me back from putting it all the way up there. B means pretty good, but ultimately not what I would consider one of the best. C is just kind of like, middle of the road, don't really care that much. And then F is an ending that I dislike for one reason or another. I thought about having a D tier, but frankly, I don't think there's enough endings in this game for me to justify having one. So F tier is just going to end up being catch-all for what I dislike. I'm not really making this video for anything other than just to archive my thoughts. So let's get started. Ending 0, this is the one that I assume most players would obtain first, which is obtained by putting the poison into the birch's pool, and that's what it drinks up. I gotta say, it really just nails the feeling of making you feel just like a complete dumbass, I think, because the entire ending it goes through talking about how nothing exists anymore, and it's just like, damn, I did that because some guy told me to, right? Kind of makes you feel like a sheep, like a follower. I think it's what most people experience start off with, right? I think it's a pretty cool start to the game. I think it goes through, like, it tells you a lot of the mechanics, like it introduces you to, like, feeding the cat. It teaches you about using the sword, right? I'd say it's a pretty solid. I don't quite want to put it in A or S, but it's pretty good, so I think I'm gonna put it in B. The next ending, Parasites. The actual process of getting this one is pretty cool, I think. You use the fishing rod to get a regular fish, and then you feed it to the beast. And he gives you a pot of oil in return, and that oil is what gets you this ending. I think that process is pretty cool. The beast says something about the oil being the last thing he has from his homeland, which is, it lets your mind wander about about where he came from, on what the bigger about how much further the world that you're in kind of goes out in, which I think is pretty cool. I gotta say that the ending itself, not really my thing. I don't think it's extremely clearly articulated what exactly is going on. The conclusion I came to, because it talks about the nature of a parasite as an organism, and how a small few have made things worse for everybody, which is making me think that because of the fact that this is spurred on by pouring oil into the pool, that it's referring to, I guess, the 1% in, like, capitalist society, right? The billionaires that ruin the world for their own benefit, which is, like, that's kind of cool. But at the same time, I'm not even sure if that's exactly what he was going for with this. That was just the interpretation I was able to come up with. So I think the process of getting it pretty cool. For me, the ending itself leaves a lot to be desired. As interesting ideas, I'm going to put it squarely in C. Alright, this ending, Murderers. This is the one that occurs when you take the blade, or you take the deadly fish. You kill the beast in some variety, and you take its blood in the vial, and using that beast blood is actually how you get this ending, by using it on the pool of the birch. I think that's pretty cool, because it describes how society has there's not really any real society, right? How it's just endless bloodshed, right? Endless violence among the inhabitants of Earth, of the inhabitants of the universe, right? It's just endless conflict. And I think, the way that story is told, I think that's pretty cool. I think the way it relates to how you actually have to go about getting this, which is taking a blade and then just committing a basically random act of bloodshed, is pretty cool. I think it all ties together pretty well. Um, it's a little bit basic on the gameplay side, right? It is pretty much as simple as going to the lake area, grabbing the blade, and then killing the cat with it. But I think it does a lot of good. I'm gonna put it right here in B tier. Um, Ending 3, the cycle. This one, the route you get it is, I have a lot of thoughts on this one. It's the route that you get it. This is what happens when you put a vial of your blood into the pool, and the way you go about getting that is first you have to discover the island area. And the thing about this area is that it's kind of tucked away behind some landscape, and it's underneath some bushes that aren't necessarily, it's not explicitly obvious that there's anything underneath them. And for me personally, in the developer commentary, he actually talks about, like, this might have been intentional, because he talks about how he wanted to kind of bring back vibes of those in Lego Island. There were these mysterious kind of hidden tunnels, and he wanted to hidden caverns, really, and he wanted to carry that same sort of vibe. But for me, that it's a little bit vague for my liking, just because of the fact that, like, the only way you're gonna find this is by hugging walls, like you're trying to find a door in the original Wolfenstein, right? I mean, you're not really gonna find this in any, to me, meaningful exploration. It really is just grinding up against walls, and to me, that's a little bit disappointing, because I understand what he was going for in terms of wanting it to be a very mysterious kind of cavern area. But for me personally, I do wish there was at least a scrap of paper on the ground that said something about caverns being hidden behind foliage, right? Because for starters, the area in which the foliage in the cave is found in, that's not even an area which is, like, explicitly, like, it's kind of, you gotta find it by, like, kind of going over a little raised surface of ground next to where the beast is. And I think that itself is kind of already, not really an area most people go usually, but it's on top of the fact that you have to explicitly go into these bushes, and there's not even any really texturing behind them that would imply a cave. You have to kind of just go in these bushes, and then it's just that part of actually finding the island area, not really cool. I don't think. I don't think that's super. I don't think it's super creative in the way that a lot of the game is. But it is what it is, I think. Then from there, sorry, I'm just thinking about how you actually get here. I think the fact that you have to use the poison on the ocean around the island is pretty cool, to kill the seaweed, and you only get that by talking to the weird sea creature, right? I think that's pretty cool. And I think when you enter the suburbia area, it is super crazy, because the entire game up until this point, every surrounding area has just been, like, it's just been not really tied to any explicit era, right? Definitely nothing modern, right? But then you enter this modern suburbia with radios and TVs, and that's pretty cool. And then you kill the little creature watching the TV. I'm not really sure what he's supposed to represent. I think it's some equivalent of a player stand-in. I'm not sure, because you get your blood from it, right, after you use the vials. Anyway, that was a lot of information. I'm sorry. I think that entire process, taking it in, I think I like a lot of what's going on in that process, but I also can't say I'm too huge of a fan of it, right? Then the actual ending itself, I don't really know what's going on there, right? For me, I think it's just too cerebral. It's really conceptual. I think it has something to do with, it mentions how you're a product of the society that made you. I think it's supposed to have something to do with the fact that killing the player stand-in, who I think is explained by the ending as being your child or something similar, that was kind of a morally wrong choice, and it kind of explores that. I don't know. It's a lot, and I wasn't really too into it. I like to place it higher, but for me, it's going in F. That doesn't mean it's completely horrible or that's completely bad. I just think that there was a lot. There were too many questions I had. Bones ending. This one is pretty cool. You speak to the you speak to the guy by the cabin in the dream world, and you after you obtain the painting for him, which you can get by throwing a jar on it, then you can then he gives you his liquid bone, right? And you use that liquid bone to get this ending. I think that entire process, I think it's just like, it's super simple, but at the same time, it's a little bit, it's kind of cool, right? Because you have to figure out how to use the jar by interpreting the note, and you have to throw it at the painting, and then you have to give it to the guy. I think that's a pretty cool process, and I like the liquid bone that it gives you and how the ending it creates. This is kind of the closest thing this game has to a real like joke ending, because it's kind of self-referential in it. It talks about everybody's made a skeleton and how that's disappointing, and it doesn't really go too deep into the implications of this, but it does mention how no one has the eyes for art and no one has the skin for touch, and I think that's pretty cool. Kind of creates this image of an unfeeling society, right? I think that's cool. I think there's a lot to like there, even though it is so simple. For me, I'd say that's in the A tier. I would give it S tier if perhaps it had a little bit more. I guess if it took itself a little bit more seriously in the ending, or if it explored the implications of the society more. But I am a pretty big fan of it overall, right? Gold star from me. This one, Feed It. This one is pretty cool. It's a sum. First, you have to figure out how to make a plant growth potion. You find a little note on the ground that explains you make a plant growth potion through blood of beast and liquid bone. And I've already talked about you get both of those. But I think that finding that, and then you kind of do some alchemy, I guess, to create that potion. And usually use that potion to grow a plant, which is used to get to the other side of the kind of chasm in the autumn area, which you use to get to the church. I just like how it feels kind of like it's like the plant growth potion really feels like your reward for, this is the first ending after the first ending I got, which was the emptiness, nothing ending. That was the ending where I really felt like I was like doing something. I was pretty pleased with it. I think the ending it has is the actual ending itself. It's pretty cool. It talks about how the birch has mutated into this like all hungry, all consuming plant, right? And how a cult formed to feed sacrifices to the plant. And that's really good world building. In so few lines. It's like, it's very much like Little Shop of Horrors kind of thing, right? I was pretty into it, actually, because it's kind of campy in that sense, but it also takes itself a little bit seriously. I really like this one. I was kind of gonna go with A at first, but I see no reason not to put an S. So, okay. This is ending 4, Faith. To get this one, you have to go to the underwater area, which is in the island. You have to find a key in the church. You have to find a key in the sunken church, and then use that key on the above ground church in the autumn area. And you can only access that church after using a plant growth potion. And you get wine from the barrels inside the church. In this actual process, I kind of like it, because after you use that plant growth potion and you find that church and you can't open it, and you're like, okay, I need to find the key, that is your first hint that there's something more in this world other than the 3 areas that you've explored, right? Or like the 4 areas, or the easily accessible areas through doors, right? It's the hint that you need to maybe look a little bit harder, right? And if this was and of course, so it's kind of pointing you that there's another area, that other area being like the island area. But again, it's just, I wish the island area, there was just something to actually gear you towards that, right? So I'd say there's a lot to like here. There's a lot to like the actual process of getting the wine. But it's also, I just wish that island area was better, right? I just wish that island area was better articulated to the player. But then the actual ending itself, it's pretty strange because I think the dev was kind of confused between whether or not he wanted to make the ending about how the world becomes a bunch of drunks or everyone in the world becomes super faithful. And he kind of tried to combine the two and tried to draw parallels, I guess, between those two acts. At the same time, I feel like it's kind of all over the place and doesn't really have a whole lot going for it in terms of actual clearly articulated story, right? I mean, to me, I'm gonna put it in C tier above Parasites, but I just don't think it's super. I don't think the point was clearly made in the same way that these other endings in the above 3 tiers have. Then this one, the immortality ending. This one's cool because it's God, it's just I think the concept of having to speak to the man in the well and he talks to you about how he needs the skull of an immortal and how he's been cursed. Super cool world building, right? Because it implies that there's so much wonder and magic in this world that this guy's close to solving it all, right? And then, of course, you go to the house that has the rotting body in it, and oh my god, that was just absolutely terrifying. You enter that room, pitch dark, super silent, and you walk down the stairs, and all you see is just like a rotting corpse just sitting there. Thought that was awesome. And I think the way that you have to interpret how you have to go and speak to the fisherman who you probably talked to in your first playthrough, and he talks about the fish that can kill an immortal. And of course you can find that fish by looking at a painting, right? And it's like, I just think that the actual process of getting this ending, of jumping through all the hoops, I think it is just awesome. The way it feels so many elements of the game combined holistically to find it, right? And then the ending itself, it's super cool the way it talks about how, everyone in the world has discovered great beauty, right? Because there's nothing that can't be discovered anymore. So everybody discovered the great beauty of the universe. But then after everything's gone, living beings are still alive and there's nothing to do, right? And that's the one problem they can't solve, is being alive. And it kind of implies everybody is doomed to the fate of the immortal that you found in the wooden house, right? I think that's super cool. I think this is probably the best ending in the game. I would put this in S tier, right? Oh, sorry. Put that in S tier. This one, you get this one by pouring the tomato soup in the pond. I think it's super cool. Again, I've explained my gripes with the island area a few times, but I think it's chill how it's just how you have to walk along the road, right? And I actually tried doing this at first, and I couldn't find anything. I had to go back and walk longer than I thought I would have to find the laboratory, so I thought that was cool. And the scientist character, the way that you read through his logs and read him going insane, that's cool. And then I think, how it's just like a conspiracy theory that's trying to uncover the true nature of the world. And then you pour this tomato soup into the pool, and it kind of explains how everyone in that world realized that nothing was real, but then it shifts its focus to you, the viewer, you, the player, rather, about how, even though their world might not be real, yours is, and it's up to you to be real and to make changes in that world. And I think that's cool, right? I think that's a good message, right? I love to see a good message in my video games, and I like how it's just, I really like how it's super, how like that whole laboratory setup is. Love how it's themed. For me, if I liked the way you get to the island better, it would be an S tier. But for me, I think it's an A tier. Right? I'll put it above the bones. And then this one, Free Will. I have the most mixed thoughts on this one, I think, more than any other thing in the game, because the actual ending itself, super cool. super duper cool, right? Because it talks about how everyone in the universe has been given free will and how the future no longer exists because it's up to us to create it. That is awesome. That is chill. That's badass, right? And the way you get it by talking to God, right? This being that identifies as God. You get that in the moon area. You literally, it's the guy from the titles from the Steam page, right? From like the title page. I just think it sucks how the way you get this is through a random encounter behind the church, and it's like, if it was always behind the church, that'd be one thing, right? I think it'd be maybe a little bit anticlimactic, but I think that'd be pretty cool. But it's like a random encounter, and it's like, I just think that this feels like it really feels like the thesis statement of the game, kind of, right? It's all about free will and making your own choices. Like, that's all you're doing here, right? It's making choices, right? And this ending, which so beautifully like talks about that and talks about how that power was given to everyone in the universe. I don't see why that should be locked behind the stupid a random chance encounter behind the church, right? It's like, I so badly want to put this in like one of these like higher tiers, but for me, it's just the way that you have to get it is so unintuitive and so unintuitive and so like daft. I just can't justify putting it any higher than like C tier. You know, it's like, for me, this is unfortunately, it's a super top of C tier thing, which really sucks because it feels like this is what the game's been building up to, like thematically, and you know, it's just super cool aesthetically, but it's just the way you have to get there. It just doesn't make any sense, right? It's just so vague. But you know, it's in C tier. And then this one, I can't really rank this like the others. The way you get to the secret is pretty cool, right? You know, by just grinding up on walls, right? And then you find the out of bounds area. And like, I know I shit on the island for being found by grinding up on walls, but this one, it makes sense on account of it being, you know, a really secret out of bounds area, right? I just think it's super cool and simple how, you know, you just find the developer, he talks to you, tells you to get a secret, and then you get the whole secret video. I think that's cool. Again, I don't really know how to rank this like the others, so I'm just going to stick in an A tier because that feels good. My final list. Oh yeah, that'll be all.